Good evening and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I am Ryan Roberts and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hey, my favorite topic, mobsters.
I'm sorry, I should say, how you doing?
How
you doing? I am doing fantastic. I'm excited. Okay, so let's just be honest here because y'all two are like the mobster aficionados. And I am just kind of breaking into this world. But I'm excited because the topic that I'm currently working on has a lot to do with mobsters. So I'm gonna see how much knowledge I have tonight.
Hey, just when he thought he was out, we pulled him right in.
That's right. You don't abandon the family.
Now you know.
Oh Lord, are we gonna do this all night long?
Probably, because I've always wanted a big old mobster to call me his little Gumar. I don't want to be the wife.
Well, we also know you were a mobster in a former life, so
I really was.
I
really was. I have proven that as of late really badly.
Well, Shelley's favorite language or his favorite saying is "You win against the family."
And then
you're dead to me.
When you do that, you're dead to me.
Yeah, I usually follow it with "you're dead to me." Yeah. There's a reason one person's never been invited back to the show. I'm like, you're dead to me.
So, well, if you can't tell already, we're getting really deep into some gangster stuff tonight. And tonight we're covering Henry Hill. And now, how many of you guys have seen the Goodfellas movie?
I've actually seen that one.
Okay, and Blake, you've never seen Goodfellas?
Sexy Ray Liotta.
I'm gonna go with
that good-looking blue-eyed man on. I know he's dead now, but I can still list him after in the movie.
I mean, so Blake, after this, you're probably going to go watch Goodfellas because Goodfellas is a very, very good adaptation of the story, but there is a little bit more to it than Goodfellas actually portrays, and it's really, really interesting. So go check that out after we're done. So before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to the authors that I did read to do the research on this, and Nicholas Pileggi, or I think it's Pileggi or Pileggi.
Pileggi, get it right.
Well, you know,
don't go against the family.
Don't go against the family.
Well, he wrote the book Wiseguy, which was adapted to the Goodfellas movie, and also another book, The Lufthansa Heist by Henry Hill and Daniel Simone. So those are the two that I looked at. Henry Hill actually also helped Pileggi write this book. So,
and it's D. Simone.
No, not D. Simone is in the book, but Daniel Simone is a different guy that helped Henry Hill write the book.
I thought you said Daniel D. Simone. My apologies.
No, D. Simone is somebody completely different, but you're on the right track. So we're going to go ahead and hop right into this because this is going to be a very interesting story and a whole lot of fun, and it's going to be a roller coaster ride. So let's go ahead and get started.
We apologize in advance for our New York accents.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking do this.
Jesus Christ. Guys, all of a sudden I have an emergency. I can't be on this podcast tonight. I'm just kidding.
You ain't got shit else to do. What you talking about? All right. So Henry Hill was born in Manhattan on June the 11th, 1943, to two working class parents who had both immigrated to the U.S. when they were very young. His father, Henry Hill Sr., had come over from Ireland at age 12. Not having the time or resources for a childhood, he went to work immediately to support his mother and his siblings. Eventually, he became a union-sanctioned electrician and met Henry's mother, Carmela Costa. She too had come to America at an early age. With her family, she immigrated from Sicily at age 7. She immigrated from Sicily when she was young, but at age 17, she began dating Henry's father, and it was off to the races.
Ooh.
The couple fell head over heels in love and got to work fast building their little family. They cranked out several children, including Henry Jr., and moved into a 3-bedroom house in Brooklyn, where the family eked out a pretty meager existence.
Like you say, they cranked out several children.
Oh, they got busy. So they got busy quick.
Jelly.
I'll make another one look just like you. Don't care.
So Henry recalled of like their existence when they first got started was that they never went hungry, but they didn't have a whole lot of money for extras. So they were very lower class, like, you know. And so as Henry grew up, he watched his parents struggle. He saw how hard his dad worked just to keep him and all of his brothers and sisters fed. But Henry was also watching something else. And that something happened to be the cab stand across the street. Across from the Hill House was the Euclid Avenue taxi cab and limo service. On the surface, it was just a regular cab dispatch stand. But in reality, it was so much more than that. It was a gathering place for all the neighborhood's flashy gangsters and the unofficial headquarters of Paulie Vario. Now, Paul Vario was a capo in the Lucchese crime family, one of the original 5 families. And Paul had done several stints in jail from the age of 11 and had served for everything from truancy to loan sharking. But as his stock rose in the family, those charges kind of started to disappear. And Paul ran the cab stand, and everyone respected and feared him. Henry obsessively watched the cab stand and watched Paul. He watched as well-dressed mobsters pulled up in long black Cadillacs, dripping with gold jewelry and pockets full of cash, got out of their cars and held court with Paul in front of the cab stand. Henry saw the kind of money and respect that Paul and his crew had, and they had it all. But Henry had nothing. His dad was a working stiff and he made an honest living. And Henry saw that an honest living got you nowhere. And Henry knew right then and there he wanted to be one of them. Henry Hill was going to be a wise guy no matter what it took. So, in 1955, Henry walked into the cab stand looking for a job. Henry's family could use the cash, but ultimately, Henry wanted a front row seat to all the action. He asked Paul's brother, Tuddy Vario, if he could have a job at the cab stand after school. And being an impressionable young man on the edge of puberty, Henry was hired and welcomed with open arms. Henry's parents were elated when he got his job. His dad was happy that his son would be learning the value of hard work, and his mom was happy that Henry was working for Italians from the old country, so she was through the moon. Things were great at first, but Henry's parents soon learned the cab stand wasn't just a part-time gig. Henry seemed to spend every waking minute at the cab stand. They were worried, and they should have been, because Henry had fallen in with a pretty rough crowd. Henry was palling around with members of one of the most powerful crime families in New York City. Paul Vario was pretty high up in the organization, and so were his brothers, and they ran the whole neighborhood. You had Paul's older brother, Lenny, who was a construction union official, and he made sure construction companies had no-show jobs for all the mobsters. And he also made sure that anyone building in the neighborhood paid protection money for their buildings. Tommy Vario ran an illegal gambling operation and oversaw the long sharking business and bookmaking for the Vario brothers. Tuddy ran the cab stand, and Salvatore, a.k.a. Babe, was in charge of running dice games and card games and was also in charge of paying off the cops so they stayed off the Vario's back.
Sorry, I just love all the nicknames that come with all these names.
Oh, they all have a nickname. They all, and for those of you who don't know, at that time, the Lucchese family that was the most powerful family. It didn't become the Gambinos until like Castellano and Gotti took over. That's when the Gambino crime family kind of began to take over. But Lucchese's, they were the ones to watch out for. They ran
at the time.
I'm gonna say, yeah, y'all are gonna have to break it down like kindergarten level for me tonight, okay? Just FYI.
Okay.
Ryan, I'm gonna need you to go into the hierarchy and tell me who is. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, man, go back and watch Gotti. I already did that.
Yeah, right.
Now, Henry was around these men all day, every day, and they were teaching him how to be a crook, and Henry was learning all that he could. They were educating him more than any classroom ever could. Henry was parking their cars and running their betting slips, and he ran their errands and he made their money drops. He didn't need school, so he stopped going and he lived for the thrill of the cab stand. And after a while, at the stand, Henry began to notice that things began changing for him. All the old timers and shop owners began to treat him nicer. When he walked into their stores, he never had to wait in line, and they would just give him stuff. Neighborhood kids even began carrying his mother's groceries home. To him, this was the big time. He had respect. He was a junior wise guy. A few months later, Henry began helping the Varios run their card games. And that's where Henry would meet Jimmy the Gent Burke for the first time. Jimmy was an Irish gangster and associated with the Lucchese crime family. He hijacked trucks and sold their contents for cash, making him a big earner for the Varios. So Jimmy always had money and would hand out $100 bills like they were nothing. And once he met Henry, he would stuff his pockets full of money. Just because Henry would get Jimmy's drinks, and he was also Polly's protege. But Henry and Jimmy got along famously and hit it off. And Jimmy took a real liking to Henry and took him under his wing, further educating him in his criminal ways and reinforcing his truancy. Henry's parents suspected their son wasn't going to school. Their suspicion was confirmed when they got a letter from the school truancy officer stating that Henry had not been to school in months. When Henry came home that afternoon, his father was waiting on him. Henry's father grabbed him and beat him senseless for cutting class. The next day, Tootie saw the battered and bruised Henry and asked him what was wrong. Henry told Tootie that the truancy letter had been dropped off at his house by the postman, and Tootie grabbed Henry and several guys from the cab stand as they rode around looking for the postman, and they found him on his route. And once they found him, they snatched him off the street and took him down to a pizzeria that the Varios owned. They roughed him up a bit, and Tootie told the mailman that if any mail came from the school that was going to go to Henry's house, it would now be brought to the cab stand, or Tootie himself would personally throw the postman into the pizza oven. The postman said he understood and bolted out of the shop.
You got to give him credit for creative, for creative,
right.
Death threats.
Right.
You want to be in the pizza oven?
Here you go.
I love that. I love
that'll be my next
death threats.
For all of y'all who come to investigations with us, that's going to be my next line when everybody gets out of line in our investigation. Be like, you want to go in the pizza oven?
Yeah.
I just you can be one of the spirits here. You want to go in the pizza oven?
The choice is yours. Now we just got to find a pizza oven. Yeah.
Here you go, you pepperoni bitch.
I'm just gonna have Ryan walk in with the easy bake oven, and just fucking set it down like on a
just
counter.
Crack my knuckles.
There you go.
Yeah. I asked for the easy bake crematorium for Christmas. You never know when you might need it.
I mean,
continue on with your fabulous story. I said nothing. You know nothing. You heard nothing.
So the postman said he understood what they were saying, and he bolted out of the shop.
I bet he did.
I bet he did.
He understood so well that the Hill home stopped receiving letters altogether. No mail came to the Hill house.
He was like, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yeah, no mail for you today.
Not anymore.
He said, oh, the Hills? No, I'm sorry. That's
no, they can.
Oops, must have got lost in the mail.
Now, Henry continued to work for the Varios, committing petty crimes and running their errands. But at 16, he would have his first brush with the law. Tootie needed new tires for his wife's car, so he gave Henry and Polly's son Lenny a credit card to go buy them. But he made a mistake. He accidentally gave them a stolen credit card. So when they went to buy them, the cops were alerted, and the cops sprung on Henry and arrested him. But Lenny was able to make it back to the cab stand and tell Tootie. An hour after he was arrested, Henry was booked, and the Vario's lawyer, Cop Out Louie, showed up and worked his magic, putting up $500 in bail and getting Henry a 6-month suspended sentence and getting him out of jail. Now, when Henry left the courtroom, Tootie, Lenny, and Big Lenny were all out there waiting for him. They all smiled and laughed and hugged Henry while Tootie kept yelling, "You broke your cherry, kid." And Henry had been pinched, but he had gotten away with it. And the Varios took him for a clam dinner to celebrate. Henry was on his way to being a real wise guy. Now, while Henry was becoming a wise guy, things at home had gotten a little bit tense. So he decided to go straight for a while and joined the paratroopers just after his 17th birthday. Soon, he was shipped off to Fort Bragg and stayed in the Army for a few years. But he couldn't resist running a racket for very long. He worked in the kitchen, so he had access to the excess food, all the excess food that the Army had ordered. And he began taking the food and selling it to restaurants in the area. Blatantly stealing from the Army. He also began running illegal card games and loan sharking on base. Eventually, Henry was discharged and released from the Army, and where he went right back to the streets and into the waiting arms of the Varios. Soon after Henry returned home, Jimmy Burt turned him on to selling illegal cigarettes. Henry began selling carton after carton like hotcakes. He found it was easy money and soon began moving large amounts for Jimmy. But the business would really take off when Jimmy brought in a new prospect, a skinny kid with a John Waters mustache named Tommy D. Simone. He was a young wise guy just like Henry. And Jimmy wanted Henry to show him the ropes. Henry did, and he and Tommy also became fast friends. The two began moving an insane amount of cigarettes together. So much so that they were making between $300 and $400 a day. And this is like in the early 60s.
That's a good earner. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which garnered the attention of local law enforcement.
Off cigarettes?
Off of cigarettes.
Now, a quick question. Sure. I didn't realize that the cigarette sales were illegal at that time, or was it just they were hijacking trucks and illegally selling Jimmy was hijacked cigarettes?
Yeah, because Jimmy was hijacking the trucks and they were selling cigarettes. And
they were selling stolen cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hot cigarettes. Damn. Okay. Industrious little hustler.
Mm-hmm. I said, but to keep the cops off their backs, Henry and Tommy kept the cops stocks of cigarettes, and so the cops just looked the other way, didn't really care. Now,
smoke.
Now, when Henry, Tommy, and Jimmy weren't running cigarettes, they would go around town busting out restaurants. Now, what busting out was getting all of their mob friends together, and they would go into bars and restaurants and run up massive tabs. When the owner had enough and called in the tabs, they would threaten to beat up the owner and go about their business. The owner, being low on cash, he would seek out help from Polly, and Polly would offer the owner protection and take a piece of the business. So now the owner has to pay Polly and give the mob access to the books, which they would, and they would give the access to the books, and the mob would use the restaurant's credit to get a line of credit and purchase anything from lobsters to furniture to sell out the back, never intending to actually pay the credit card bill and turning pure profit off of the goods they were selling out of the back of the restaurant. Polly would have, when once the place was drowning in debt and it outlived its usefulness, Polly would have it burned down and collect the insurance money. It was a foolproof scheme and was repeated ad nauseum, and another scheme on the list of Henry's schemes as he was, breaking into the mob. By 1965, Henry had it all. He was making money, going where he wanted, and sleeping with any woman that he wanted, until he met Karen and fell head over heels for her. While Henry and his new girlfriend Karen were dating, she lived with her parents. She lived across the street from a guy named Steve, who she had grown up with. Steve the Demon.
Fucking hell, Brian. Right as I was taking a drink, you just go,
Steve.
Throwback. Anyway.
He had a brand new Corvette and seemed like a really nice guy. And he asked Karen if she would ride with him to run an errand that day. Now, she agreed, but once in the car, he pulled off the road and tried to assault Karen. Karen fought him off, and she was able to kick him and beat him. She was able to get him off of him, and so he kicked her out of his car and left her on the side of the road. She walked to the nearest payphone and called Henry. Henry picked her up and drove her home. As he dropped her off, Henry reached into his glove compartment, and inside the glove compartment, he kept a little .22 pistol. He grabbed it and walked across the road and right up to Steve. And when he walked up to Steve, he smacked him in the face with the butt of the pistol. As Steve went to his knees, Henry grabbed him by the hair and repeatedly beat him in the face with the pistol until he begged him to quit and pissed all over himself. Henry ran back across the street to a waiting Karen. He tossed her the gun and told her to hide it. She hid it in the milk box on the porch, and Henry took off, parking his car around the block and walking back to Karen's house. Now, Steve's brothers had called the cops in the time that Henry went and dropped his car off. Henry walked back around the corner, and the cops were waiting. They questioned Henry about the gun, but he lied and said he didn't have one. The cops believed him and drove him back to Brooklyn. Karen was absolutely smitten that Henry would do such a thing for her. And Henry now knew he could trust Karen. So the two drove down to North Carolina and tied the knot, much to the chagrin of her parents. But nonetheless...
Whip his ass, baby. Whip his ass.
but nonetheless, Henry moved into Karen's parents' house. He lied and told Karen's parents that he had a steady job as a bricklayer, but he continued to keep gangster's hours, prompting a lot of chiding from Karen's mother about his whereabouts. Then, if that wasn't enough, Henry gets pinched again. He had driven to Baltimore to get a load of cigarettes that he and Jimmy and Tommy's cigarette racket needed to keep going. On the way back to New York City, he got caught in a speed trap and was charged with selling untaxed cigarettes. Cop out Louis did his thing, and he was released on $1,500 bond. Henry was now out of money and cigarettes, so he needed a big score. Jimmy was already hijacking trucks leaving JFK Airport for their cargo, so he decided to cut Henry in on the action so he could make some more money. Now, Jimmy loved stealing and was damn good at it. He and his crew would hijack trucks full of everything from furs to silverware coming from the airport cargo hangars out at JFK. Jimmy had eyes and ears all over the airport that would tip him off about large loads and loads that had things that they wanted inside of them. He knew more about the cargo coming and going than anyone else. He would get a tip-off and hijack the loads on one of the many back roads coming out of JFK. Hijacking the same drivers so many times that some of them got to be on a first-name basis with Jimmy.
Then like, just take
God
it,
damn it, Jimmy,
Mhm.
just get the shit
Jimmy,
out
just
the
take
truck
the crap.
and just
Here.
Don't hit me
man.
with your
Get it.
gun this time,
Like,
okay?
Jesus, dude. Black guy just healed like 2 days ago. Just
Yeah.
take the shit.
Well, see, Jimmy was more smart than that. Jimmy was a little bit more smooth because Jimmy would slide them some cash for their trouble and then take their load. He'd be like, here's a couple bucks. Look the other way.
You didn't see nothing.
Right. Now, if their bosses got...
How much is that, though, that he slid them? I mean, $10? I might have to say something, but, you know, like 15.
No, you wouldn't, because you get whacked.
No. Yes.
That's when
because
say
this is
sleeping
why
with the fishes.
This is why I would not survive in these worlds. I'm just telling you.
like, especially if he knew who you were and you ratted, that was it. You were done.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, say the
Mhm.
sleep with the fishes, Ryan.
You're going to sleep with the fucking fishes.
That's right.
So, concrete shoes.
We're totally gonna be canceled in New York after this episode is over.
New York
Now-
knows we're idiots.
Oh, they know. if they don't know by now, I don't know what they're doing here.
Learn.
So if the bosses got suspicious and tried to fire one of Jimmy's drivers, the trucking union presidents would threaten strikes, leaving the drivers employed and Jimmy easy access to goods. This was where the real money was and where it could be made very easily. So it was only natural that Jimmy would bring Henry and Tommy into the fold. Now, in 1966, 23-year-old Henry went on his first hijacking run. There were 3 truckloads of home appliances being stored in a garage by the airport. So that weekend, they hit the garage when there was only one person on guard duty, an old man that Henry tricked into opening the gate by saying he left his paycheck in the truck in the garage. As soon as the old man opened the gate, Henry stuck his finger in the old man's back, saying it was a gun and he better cooperate. Henry tied the old man up and signaled Tommy and Jimmy. The 3 stole the 3 trucks and drove the cargo to a fence that Tuddy had set up. Henry earned $5,000 for his part and couldn't believe how easy the money was. So Henry and his crew began pulling 2 to 3 jobs a week out at the airport, raking in the cash and getting a few nice things for themselves. But they had their eyes on an even bigger prize.
And this isn't okay. What's the time period on this?
This is like in the early 60s. Yeah,
Damn,
early to mid 60s, 1966.
God, it got paid out like $5,000 back then.
Mm-hmm. In 1966,
off
yeah.
One load. Made $5,000 off one load.
And you said they're doing 2 to 3?
2 to 3 a week, on top of selling cigarettes, too. He's got all these rackets going.
He's a hustler. Good earner.
So money is coming in hand over fist for Henry. Now, while Henry and the boys were making stupid money, they were always looking for more. One day in January of 1967, that big score would fall right into their lap. Bobby McMahon was a cargo foreman at Air France at JFK. He knew Henry and Jimmy from buying their cigarettes, and everyone that knew him called him Frenchie. Now, Frenchie would float info about cargo shipments coming in from France to the mobsters, helping them score perfumes, chocolates, and fine clothing. But this score was different and huge. Frenchie told the gangsters that there was a huge money drop coming into the airport. Air France would drop 4 or 5 canvas bags containing thousands of dollars, and they would drop them off in the Air France vaults, and a truck would come and pick them up the next morning and take them to the bank. It was just sitting there for the taking, but there was one problem. A dopey security guard had the only key. That he kept on him at all times, by the way. So Henry and the boys bided their time and set up a plan to get that key. And one night they had Frenchie take the security guard to a nearby hotel. And Frenchie regaled this guy with stories of loose women that he knew. And they had Frenchie bring one of the women down to the hotel. And while he was distracted in the hotel hot tub, Henry and Jimmy snuck into his room where the dope had left the keys laying beside his bed. They snagged them and had a copy of the keys made and snuck back into his room and left the keys on the nightstand, and he was none the wiser.
You can't make this fucking shit up.
Blake, you never trust a dame. Never.
No, I don't. It's all good.
Well, I know you don't.
Trust me, I don't either. I never trust another dame.
Maybe that's my problem. I don't know. Now that they had a copy of the key, they just had to wait for the drop. Frenchie had his ear close to the ground waiting for the money to drop. And finally, one weekend it occurred, and the timing was absolutely perfect. Frenchie contacted Henry and Jimmy. He told them about the drop and that the armored car wouldn't come to pick up the money till Tuesday because Monday was a Jewish holiday. It would take days for Air France to notice something was amiss. So late that Saturday night, Henry and Jimmy went and bought a giant suitcase to make Henry look inconspicuous when he walked into the airport and to stuff all the money into when he walked into the vault. Henry and Jimmy drove a rental car with fake plates to the airport.
Exactly, just whistling on through the damn airport.
So Henry and Jimmy drove a rental car with fake plates out to the airport at shift change. Now Henry rolled right in under the watchful eye of Frenchie. He put the key in the vault door and walked right into the storeroom. He stuffed his suitcase full of cash and walked right back out the front door. The gangsters had scored big, about $480,000 just like that.
Oh, shit.
Now, in Jimmy, 1960s money.
In 1960s money.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Now, Jimmy, Tommy, and Henry all gave a huge cut to Polly because, you got to give the boss a little bit of something.
That's right. You got to pay up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the three hopped a flight to Vegas to cover their tracks. They came back saying they hit it big out west to quell any suspicions about their new spending habits. And upon return, Henry and Tommy bought brand new cars, and Henry became a silent partner in a restaurant called The Sweet. Now, owning a restaurant was more trouble than Henry had realized. Soon, all of the Vario crew began eating and drinking at The Sweet. But Paulie forbade anyone to bust Henry's joint out because Henry was one of their own, and they didn't want to do that.
Just so that you know, Ryan, before you continue, that $480,000 back in the late 60s is equivalent to $4.6 million today.
That's insane.
That they just walked out the front door.
Just walked out the front door.
For the equivalent of 4.6 with his massive inconspicuous suitcase.
Yes.
I mean, obviously airports are not the same anymore.
Dropping dollar bills as he goes. It's like,
yeah, equivalent to $4.6 million.
Yeah, with his oversized Looney Tunes suitcase.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, because all these wise guys were hanging out at the Sweet, Henry was always busy and he was always hanging out there because he wanted to make sure everything was going smooth. And because he was stuck at the restaurant and everybody knew it, someone began to call Karen and harass her at home.
Uh-oh.
They would call and they would say all kinds of perverted things to the poor woman. And finally, one night, Henry told her to play along and bait the creep to come by the apartment. Now, Karen got the thug to agree to come by. And she called Henry, and Henry raced home waiting for the guy to show up. After about an hour, a car rounded the block, coming by the house real slow. Henry just knew that this was the creep that had pestered his wife. The man had his window down and was squinting at the house numbers, looking at the house numbers to see where the house numbers were. Henry approached the car, and he was consumed by rage, and he pulled a gun out. He stuck it in the upper half of the man's window and asked him if he wanted something. The man, scared and confused, just stammered, and Henry smacked him across the face with that gun. He's hell with that damn gun, smacking the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Whipping the shit out of people.
Mm-hmm. The man opened the door and tried to run, but Henry caught up with him and knocked him down. He climbed on top of him and began beating him in the face with the weapon, mercilessly pummeling the poor man. He heard sirens approaching and ditched his weapon. And come to find out, the guy was just looking for his friend's house. He had nothing to do with what was going on with Karen. The cops
he was in a car, right?
Yeah, he was in a, well, like I said, he raced in the car and he tried to run after he hit him. And he caught up with him and tackled him.
Well, just hit the fucking gas and drag his ass. I don't know.
Right.
I think that Henry had literally grabbed him by the throat, if I remember part of the story, the collar of his throat, and pulled him halfway out. of the window before he started beating him.
Maybe
that's why he couldn't just hit the gas and take off.
I was gonna say, because that don't make sense, because I'd just reach my damn foot down and just floor the son of a bitch, and just boom,
well,
your arm stuck in the window.
Expecting it. He wasn't expecting it. Right. He was looking for his friend's house. He didn't know some crazy mobster thought that he was there to, defile his wife.
Well, to quote Mike Tyson,
that'll get you killed.
To quote Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. So he probably was just like trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So
I just love that Ryan quoted Mike Tyson, but anyways, go ahead. Just a random place. Anyways, go ahead.
You asked why. So the cops found Henry. So, this guy had nothing to do with it. And Henry ditched his gun, but the cops found Henry's gun and charged him with assault. Henry's lawyer got him out on bail with ease, and Henry's rap sheet was growing. Like, he was starting to get a little more attention from the cops. And Henry found himself in another pickle shortly after his assault charge came through. Henry was at a bar named Roberts at a party for a newly sprung mobster named Billy Batts. Now, Batts was a made man in the Gambino crime family and a member of John Gotti's crew. Henry was there with his usual crew of Tommy and Jimmy. Billy was drunk and noticed Tommy. Billy knew Tommy from the neighborhood, and Tommy used to shine shoes when Billy went away to prison about 6 years earlier, but had since come into his own as a gangster and had grown up. Billy started jabbing Tommy with little good-natured ribbing. He asked Tommy if he still shined shoes. Now, Tommy didn't like it at all because he was blasted on whiskey, so he was a little bit more volatile than usual. Tommy was absolutely livid, but Batts was a made man. If Tommy did anything to Batts, he would be a stain on the sidewalk. Henry figured nothing would happen because of Billy Batts' status, but Tommy leaned over to Henry and told him, quote, "I'm going to kill that fuck." But Tommy, yeah. Now, nothing happened that night, but in the back of his mind, Henry knew Tommy was serious. A few weeks later, on June the 11th, 1970, Billy came into the suite for a drink and hung out real late. Henry was there hosting and working while Jimmy was drinking at the end of the bar. And who should happen to walk in but Tommy? He walked up to Henry and told him to make sure Billy didn't leave. He would be right back. Henry knew what Tommy meant. Tommy was going to go out and grab a body bag. Jimmy got up and went over to Billy and got real chummy all of a sudden. He started buying him drinks and telling him jokes. Billy was being lured into a false sense of security. Tommy came back with a bag and a .38 pistol. They were really about to kill a made man in this restaurant. After the bartender left, Tommy approached Batts and Jimmy. He pulled out his pistol and yelled, "Shine these fucking shoes," before smashing Batts in the head with the pistol. Tommy continued to bludgeon Billy Batts until blood poured from his head. Henry locked the front door, and the men rolled the lifeless body of Billy Batts into the body bag. They had to get rid of Billy's body, and quick. If the Gambino family found out what they did, they were all dead.
Fucking hell.
That's Gotti had it at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
Gotti. Gotti was a capo. He was just a capo at this point.
He wasn't running it. Castellano was at that point, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you still gonna be dead. You went after a made man and you didn't get the council's permission. Yeah.
No. So Jimmy knew just what to do with the body. They had to bury it where no one would ever look for it ever again. Jimmy had a friend with some land in upstate New York, so they decided to dump the body out there. But first they had to swing by Tommy's to pick up a shovel. And when they pulled into Tommy's driveway, his mom just happened to be up and about. She made the three come in and have coffee with her, while the whole time there was a dead mafioso in the trunk outside. And here they were sipping coffee and eating crumpets with his mom,
It's just a spot of tea, dear. Just come on in.
Having some cannolis and some coffee and in the trunk. Yeah.
Well, they thought that Billy was dead. Anyway, so they grab a shovel and some quicklime after breakfast, and they set off towards the property.
Yeah, they got to break down that body as fast as possible. Got to have that quick.
I know. Ryan, I'm appreciating so much your just way of just nonchalantly throwing these things in there to gloss over. It's like after breakfast, they grabbed a shovel and some quicklime.
That's what they.
What
did.
else are you going to use?
ham and eggs, and then after that, they were out the door with a shovel and quicklime.
With arms and legs. Ham and eggs and arms and legs.
And a little skullduggery.
That's right.
But on the way up to the property, they heard a thump in the trunk, followed by several more and lots of movement.
Oh.
Batts wasn't dead by some miracle. He had survived the beating. Jesus. And he was trying to get out of the trunk. So he had Henry pull over. So Tommy angrily slammed on the brakes because Tommy was driving. And he and Jimmy went to the back of the car and opened the trunk. Tommy grabbed a shovel and Jimmy grabbed a tire iron and repeatedly beat the body bag until all movement ceased.
God.
Adelaide's still real quick.
Now, they got back in the car and continued out to the property. The three of them dug a grave and covered the body with quicklime. No one would ever know what they had done. The three men put the crime in the back of their minds, but 3 months later, the trio had to go dig up the body again. Jimmy's friend had sold the land to a real estate developer. They were sure that the body would be discovered if the
body's coming back, baby.
So the three drove up and dug up the body and put it in Henry's trunk. Henry was so overcome by the smell and he got sick. He couldn't handle it. He was puking over on the side. They moved the body to a Jersey junkyard and threw it into a compactor, never to be seen again. But Henry was haunted by the smell. He couldn't shake it and tried everything to get rid of it out of his car, even pulling the liner out of the trunk and trying to wash the trunk of his car out, but he could not get rid of the smell. So eventually he had to just get rid of the car. Now, not long after the Batts incident, Henry finally got into some real trouble. Henry and Jimmy had a mutual friend named Casey Rosado. Casey was making a trip down to Tampa to pick up some gambling debts, but he wanted to make a fun trip out of it, so he invited Henry and Jimmy. Casey told his pals that a man named John, and I think it's Ciascio, owed him money. John owned a bar called the Temple Terrace Lounge down in Florida. And Casey set up a meeting with John at the bar with Henry and Jimmy tagging along. Jimmy and Henry sat down at the table in the restaurant to watch Casey's back while he was talking to John. But John and Casey began arguing, so Henry and Jimmy walked over. Jimmy grabbed John by the tie and pulled it so tight his eyes were bugging out of his skull. The trio moved him out of the bar and into a waiting car. However, they didn't know that the bartender was a retired New York NYPD police officer. He saw the whole incident and wrote down the gang's license plate number. They also didn't know that Casey's cousin had rented the car and put it in Casey's name, making it easy.
Dude, Casey's cousin's going to be in the trunk.
Seriously cannot fucking make these stories up. What?
No. It's a trip, man. It's a trip. These guys are... they're killing people and doing all kinds of stuff, but the stories really are kind of funny. If you look at them,
take out all the graphicness and the killing people and all that shit. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on, what luck is it? You go and bury a body, and then 3 years later, you got to go dig it back up because
that happened a lot.
Well, I know, but I mean, it's just hilarious to me. I don't know the luck of these guys, I guess to say.
I mean, they're just as lucky as they are unlucky because they get away with shit that you would never get away with.
That's very true.
There's always some stupid little minor detail that trips them up. They're like, "Oh shit, I forgot to do this."
I just said in the comments the Three Stooges of the Mafia.
Sweetly. So they also didn't know the cases. Yeah, you know it. So making it easy to trace them. So it made it easy to trace the car back to Casey. They had really messed up this time. Inside the car, they beat John until he agreed to pay. And once they got their money, they let him go. But there was one more factor that they forgot to kind of check on whenever they went to grab John. John's sister was a typist for the FBI. John went and told her about the incident, and she went straight to her superiors with the story. Nothing happened at first. It was just a normal collection for a few wise guys. But about a month later, the feds showed up in New York City and indicted the trio.
Yeah, crap. Got the feds involved.
The FBI was making a big deal about them, saying that they were part of an interstate gambling syndicate. The state of Florida tried to hit them with a kidnapping charge, but Casey disputed it and testified that that wasn't the truth, so they beat that charge. But just before Casey...
willingly. Yeah.
But just before Casey was set to testify in the federal trial, he dropped dead of a heart attack. So there goes their alibi right out the window.
Did he though?
Yeah, did he though?
Yes, because it would have kept Henry and Jimmy out of jail.
Okay, yeah.
I think he would slip something in his cannoli.
If somebody had some ulterior motives, yes, but I don't think there's anybody else that had any ulterior motives to send them to jail for any reason at that particular moment in time, but I could be wrong. So since their alibi is out the window, on November the 3rd, 1972, Henry was sentenced to 10 years in prison, federal prison this time. And out of all the crazy stuff,
he would be fine. Be fine at Club Fed.
Club absolutely. Fed. Yeah. And out of all the crazy shit that he had pulled, this was the one that got him. Henry couldn't believe it. But nonetheless, he was on his way to prison. The Fed sent Henry to Lewisburg prison, a cold and unforgiving prison in the Pennsylvania hills, but one close enough to New York City that Henry's wife could come and visit with the kids. Henry had never been to prison before. Jail, sure, jail's a piece of cake, but prison was different. Henry got to prison, was booked, and headed inside. And who should be standing there waiting on Henry within the walls of the prison but Paul Vario? He laughed as Henry came through the front gate. Polly laughed and hugged Henry and took him into the main reception area. Inside, there were several wise guys that Henry recognized. They all clapped and laughed as Henry was brought in by Polly. Henry knew prison was going to be different. It didn't look so bad after all.
Shit.
Got all your buddies.
Everybody's hanging out. Now, after a few months of Henry being on his own in his own private cell that the mob had kind of arranged for, he was transferred to the honor dorm with Polly and the other mobsters. It was separate from the rest of the hotel. Hotel. Yeah, the Gray Bar Hotel.
Might as well have been. Had his own room.
I said it was separate from the other part of the prison and operated more like a hotel. Inside the dorm, things were very different. All the mobsters paid guards to smuggle in booze and food, and they were also able to cook their own food. While everyone else was eating shitty prison food, Henry and his friends were eating steaks and red snapper. After a while, Henry got work detail on the prison farm. The farm was a dairy farm outside the cold concrete walls of the prison. Working there afforded Henry freedom outside of the walls and away from the watchful eye of the guards. He had access to the dairy phone and put some feelers out. Soon he was arranging drops of booze in the dairy fields and burying all these drops out in the woods in giant milk containers so no one would ask him any questions, because as far as I know, he's just working on the dairy. So he began selling the booze inside the prison and making really good money. But that wasn't enough, and Henry started fooling around with cocaine for the first time. Now, he met a kid named Paul Mazier from Pittsburgh inside the prison. He and Henry became really good friends and worked out a cocaine racket inside the walls, which was a dangerous business because the bosses didn't want any extra heat on any of them. Henry was playing with fire and he knew it. But no one was paying his way and earning money for him on the outside. So who were they to tell him what to do? After all, no one was helping Karen and the kids. Henry needed money, and so did his wife. When he went away, no one came to her rescue, so Henry did what he had to do. But Henry grew... What was that?
Henry at this point still had not become a made man, correct?
No, he could never become a made man because he's half Irish.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't 100% Italian. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
that's why he had nobody looking after the kids.
Right. Yeah, because once you go away, like you're kind of dead to them for a while until you get out. You know,
unless you're a made man, and then
then you're taken care of.
They're that's right. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify because I was pretty sure he wasn't a made man, but I wanted to make sure.
No, he could never be. But Henry grew tired of the maximum security prison after a while. He had been in Lewisburg for a few years, but had been a model prisoner as far as they knew. He had heard the minimum security prison down the road, Allenwood, had some spots open. Interesting side fact. Oh God, what was his name? I just blanked on his name. The guy who did Watergate. Oh God.
Which guy?
E. Howard Hunt, and then the main guy, G. Gordon Liddy. G. Gordon Liddy had actually was in that prison and staged a hunger strike. So they had to move him and all of his compatriots out of that prison. And so there were some spots open, so Henry was able to get in.
Ryan, before you continue that real quick, because we have a couple of people asking in the comments, for anybody who does not know, will you please explain what a made man is?
So a made man is someone who is of full-blooded Italian descent, and they are sworn into the mafia. So like you have, if you are a full Italian descent, you can, if somebody sponsors you, eventually you become like a full-fledged member. Like you can be,
and you take the oath of omerta.
You take the oath of omerta. Like you truly become a member of La Casa Nostra at that point. And I have heard from Sammy the Bull since then, you don't have to be full-blooded Italian anymore. That's what he says, but I'm not sure. But if you are a made man, no one can touch you. You can do pretty much whatever you want, and people just kind of have to take it from you. There's nothing they can do about it. So you're untouchable. You're getting more money. You can become, higher up in the organization. Up until then, you can only be like an associate or a friend of the mob. You can't really be in the mob. You can be mob adjacent at that point. So
and you have to. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through. Like you got to be a good earner. You have to be a good earner for a certain amount of time. Then somebody's got to vouch for you, and then once you get vouched for, then you can become, like you said, rise up to the ranks. You can work your all way. And you can't be a capo or anything like that until you're a made man. So once you're a made man, you can get up into those where people are kicking up to you, kicking up whatever they earn. It gets kicked up to you. The higher and higher you get more and more people under you that are kicking up to you. So that's the goal.
You're making all the money.
So it's that point. It's a MLM, huh?
It's a pyramid scheme. Yeah,
a little bit, just a little bit. I mean, but way more fun. So,
is it, Ryan? Ryan?
The stories are fun.
Is it,
yes,
Ryan?
It is.
Okay.
So with a few maneuvers and a couple of lies to his prison counselor, Henry got into Allenwood, the little minimum security prison. And at Allenwood, Henry got into any social or religious program he absolutely could. That way he could get 5-day furloughs and weekend furloughs for doing work with Jewish religious programs or going to hotel business seminars with the JCs. But he wasn't doing any of that because as soon as he got out, he would slide some money to some people, hop in a car and go to Atlantic City or go back to the neighborhood, and then just had to be back to get on the bus to go back to prison.
They're like, what's your religion? I don't know. What holiday's coming up? Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Now, Henry was out of prison so often, his friends thought his prison term was over. But that wasn't the case until July the 12th, 1978. Henry was let out on good behavior, and to the feds, he looked like a model prisoner, a shining example of how to serve time, a religious man that wanted to do better, when in reality, he was none of those things. He was just as much a criminal, if not more of a criminal, when he came out. He had learned nothing, and after he got out, Henry hopped a flight directly to Pittsburgh to pick up $15,000 he was owed for his prison drug ring.
What the fuck? Jesus!
I mean, always working a scheme, man. Every time, like
I guess
every moment of every day is a scheme for these people. So Henry goes to Mazier's house to pick up his money, but Mazier only had a couple of thousand to give him because he had just picked up a large pot shipment. So he gave Henry some of the haul to sell off to make up for the cash. Henry took the biggest suitcase that he had and filled it to the brim with the pot and hopped a Greyhound back to New York City and guarded that suitcase with his life. At every stop, he was getting out, standing and like watching the luggage racks to make sure nobody was coming to get his suitcase. He got back and sold the pot and made about $12,000 in profit in no time. So he ordered more from his Pittsburgh supplier and soon began selling Quaaludes, heroin, and coke as well. Again, playing with fire because Paulie forbade any drug trafficking. But the money was too sweet to pass up, and Henry was making a killing. Henry was making his money and still earning for the Varios. But soon he would be caught up in the crossfire of one of the biggest heists in U.S. history. The Lafonza heist, as it was known, was extremely well planned.
Words are hard.
Intricate. They are hard sometimes. Extremely well planned and intricate, and Henry knew all of the players and about the heist from the conception. His friend and bookmaker, also a wig salesman, was the first to plant a bug in his ear. His name was Marty Krugman. Now, Marty and his wife came by to see Henry and Karen's new home. Marty got Henry off to the side and could barely contain himself. He told Henry that he had information about a virtual mountain of cash just sitting out at the airport. One of the guys that owed Marty money, named Lou Warner, had given him a tip. Lou owed Marty about $40,000 and figured that the tip would pay Marty off and get him some cash in the process. Lou was the cargo supervisor for a German airline, Lufthansa. Much like the earlier Air France heist in the 60s that Henry and the crew had pulled, the German airline would drop off all their currency and exchange money in the Lufthansa vault. But instead of a few $1,000s, this time it was millions. Lou knew when the drops would occur and even worked out a plan to get the cash. He told Marty how many men they would need and where they could park for easy access to the vault. He knew Marty was connected and told Marty to float his idea to some of his friends, quote unquote. To Henry, it sounded like a good plan. It would be easy money and a large score for the whole crew. But he had to convince Jimmy to get on board because Jimmy hated Marty and didn't trust him. Jimmy once had an associate try to shake Marty down for protection cash, and Marty threatened to call the DA on Jimmy, and since then, Jimmy had hated him. But with Henry's smooth talking and the amount of cash at stake, Jimmy came around and had Henry bring Marty down to his bar. Marty sat down with Jimmy and hashed out the plan. Jimmy was all in for it, and the heist was a go. By November, Jimmy had a heist crew put together. First was Joe Manry, a.k.a. Joe Buddha.
God, here we go with these nicknames again.
Can you guess why he was called Joe Buddha?
I'm going to guess his
big
size.
Dude.
Yes, he was a big old fat guy.
Okay.
Along with Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Seppi, Anthony Rodriguez, Fat Louis Cafora. Can you guess why he was called Fat Louis?
Yes, Brian, we get it.
And Paul Lacastri. They also recruited a black bar regular named Stax Edwards to be the getaway driver for the heist. Everything was ready to roll.
Wait, like 7 guys and only 2 nicknames among them? What the hell? I feel a little disappointed in this portion.
I was looking for other nicknames. I don't know if they had any, but
By the way, just letting y'all know, we have been given nicknames in our YouTube comments tonight.
Oh, okay. What is that?
Oh no, I'll tell you later.
Okay. Let's finish this story.
I'm excited.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the heist occurred on Monday, December the 11th, 1978 at 3:12 a.m. Stax parked a rented black Ford Econoline van next to the vault's loading dock. A security guard heard a commotion, went outside to investigate, where he was bludgeoned by a masked man with a pistol. Another security guard thought he heard the scuffle outside, so he opened the door to look to see what was going on when 6 masked men who had exited the van forced their way inside the vault. They rounded up employees, handcuffed them, and duct taped their mouths shut. 2 gunmen waited downstairs by the doors to make sure no one else came into the vault, while another guarded the captured employees. The other 3 grabbed the night supervisor and had him open the vault for him. They walked in the door and right before them laid their bounty. About 40 parcels full to bursting with cash totaling about $5 million. Yeah.
What's that in today's money, Blake?
I was gonna say, I'm about to look it up, Ryan. What year? Tell me the year again.
This is in 1978.
That's what I thought. 78. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Hold on, I'm about to tell you. Well, I mean, 78, $5 million. You said.
Yep.
Cool. Damn, 24.5 million.
Jesus Christ, that's insane.
Whew.
Now, they hauled all the canvas bags down to the van outside and loaded it as fast as they could. They marched the night supervisor into the room with the rest of the employees and tied him up as well. One of the gunmen complained about how hot it was in his mask and removed it for a short amount of time, allowing the victims to see his face. That smart individual was Tommy DeSimone. And with the exception of him removing his mask, the heist crew had pulled off the largest robbery in U.S. history without a hitch and rode off into the night.
Damn. Well, the equivalent of $24.5 million.
He got hot.
Money.
He got hot.
Yeah. See, this is why I could not be in this type of scenario, because that would be me. I know y'all have seen me on investigations where like, guys, I'm sweating. I'm dying. I'm literally dying.
I'd be like, you better keep that mask on if you want.
That would be me. I would be the one that slips it off, and then they're like, oh, that was Blake. Yeah, Blake was part of the robbery.
Suddenly, I don't know you no more. Don't know what the hell he was doing. I don't know who he is.
but like, I never
seen that cocksucker in my life. Never seen him before. Never.
I ain't never seen that fucking cocksucker in my entire life. I don't know what you're talking about. So, but think about this for a second. Once again, they pull off the biggest heist in U.S. history, and that one detail, it's just something small, something stupid, could possibly get them caught.
Yeah.
So, as for Henry, he didn't even know the heist that went down that night. He was actually hanging out with Marty and didn't know until a couple of days later when he and Jimmy were riding to a meeting. Jimmy threw his arm around Henry and said they had pulled off the heist. Paulie had gotten his cut, and Jimmy said everyone else would get their cut soon. By that point, the robbery was all over the news, and no one knew who did it. But at the time, the Burt crew didn't realize that Stax had really messed up.
What's Stax do?
Stax was supposed to drive the getaway car to a Gotti Run junkyard and have it crushed. But immediately after the heist, parked the van in front of a fire hydrant in Brooklyn.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yes.
Jesus Christ! I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh God!
The cops searched it, found foot and fingerprints, along with all the ski masks used in the Lufthansa job.
I'm gonna have an aneurysm over here because of all of this shit. Go ahead.
After the news, Paulie and Jimmy decided Stax had to go. They asked, and this is where I'm getting.
You
had
one job, Shelley. Stax. One job. You had one job.
One job.
One job.
Now, Shelley, this is some information that I'm gonna start getting into that I found that maybe you might know or maybe you don't. Now, also, I'm going to preface this by saying this is what Henry Hill said happened. Now, Henry Hill could spin some hot ones, but he also did have real stories and real connections and was able to, give the FBI enough evidence to actually hit people with. So,
Henry liked to talk.
He did like to talk. So, for this next little bit, this is what, according to Henry Hill, what happened. And he would be the only one that would know because nobody else knows what happened as far as this goes. So, Jimmy and Paulie decided Stax had to go. They tasked Tommy with taking care of Stax. However, Tommy was very reluctant because he and Stax were close friends. Paulie promised Tommy if he did it, Tommy would be a made man. So that weekend, Tommy and Angelo Sepe went down to Stax's house. They caught Stax in bed sleeping, and Tommy did the deed and put 5 bullets in the back of Stax's head. And he was reported to say, "Sorry, pal," before he did it. when he killed his friend. Stax wasn't the only one that had to go. Jimmy decided Marty needed to go as well. By January, he had been hanging around Jimmy's bar every single day, bugging Jimmy about his money and when he was going to get it. Jimmy was getting real tired of it. So to put some distance between him and Marty, while he figured out what to do about him, Jimmy had Henry ride with him to Florida to kill a guy that had sold him some bad cocaine. He asked Tommy to go first, but Tommy couldn't because Paulie had kept his word and Tommy was getting made that weekend. Now, Tommy would be untouchable and a real mafioso, and therefore his crew would be untouchable because if you mess with the guy's crew, that's a big no-no. But unbeknownst to Tommy, it was a total trap. He had been spotted at the Lufthansa heist when he took his mask off and had made himself a loose end and a liability. Also, someone had told the Gotti crew it was Tommy that killed Billy Batts. Gotti had a sit down with Paulie about it, and Paulie okayed Tommy's murder. So Paulie made Tommy think he was actually getting made. Tommy got dressed to the nines and was picked up by Vario's crew members. He was driven to Don Vito's restaurant in the Bronx, where he was led to the basement. Several old Mafia members and John Gotti were waiting there for him. Now, it was a little weird because you had a Gambino crime family member at a Lucchese crime family member's making. And so Tommy thought that was a little weird, but as far as he knew, it was standard. So as he walked through the door, John congratulated Tommy on his induction and had him sit at the table. As soon as he was seated, Gotti pulled out a .38 pistol with a silencer on it and shot Tommy in the back of the head 3 times, splattering his brains all over the table. Jimmy hadn't heard anything about Tommy's making, so he called New York from a phone booth down in Florida because he was trying to figure out if Tommy had been made. And that's when he got the news. Tommy was gone. Jimmy was so devastated that he let the guy in Florida slide, and he and Henry drove back home. When they got back home, Marty was all over Henry about what happened to Tommy, and also asking about his money. Henry said he would have to go talk to Jimmy about it. Henry didn't have the money, so go speak to him. And it was the last thing that Marty Krugman ever did. He tracked down a very hurt Jimmy who was still in mourning over his friend Tommy, and Jimmy had him whacked, and Marty was never seen again. By that point, the feds had begun watching Jimmy and his crew. While they couldn't pin the LaFonza heist on the crew, they were very suspicious because several mob informants began talking and telling them that the Burke crew had pulled it off. To make matters worse for Jimmy, on January the 17th, 1979, the body of Richard Eaton was discovered frozen solid in a refrigerator truck. He was a known associate of Burke's, and Jimmy's name and phone number were found in his pocket. Bodies were starting to pile up. It seemed like everyone associated with Jimmy was getting the axe, and the feds were closing in. But Henry had to worry about his own skin. Jimmy hadn't been doing too much earning since the LaFonza heist, but Henry needed money, and so he began selling drugs and more heroin, which would ultimately get him pinched again when Henry was because Henry was snorting a gram of cocaine a day just to deal with the pressure of his business ventures.
Damn.
He's dipping into a supply. That'll get you hurt.
Oh yeah. And while on a drug run that spring, Henry noticed a helicopter following him. He was so gacked out of his mind, he wasn't sure if he was seeing things. But as he ran errands all day long and ran drugs, that helicopter wasn't too far behind no matter where he went. But he had his drops to make, and he had been using a family friend named Judy to make his drops in Pittsburgh to his old prison buddy. He told Judy to book a flight to Pittsburgh, but not to use the house phone. As Henry was out getting heroin for her to take to Pittsburgh, she did exactly what she was told not to do. And later that night, as Henry came back and they were pulling out of the driveway to get Judy to the airport, Henry was blocked in by a police car and arrested. He didn't know it at the time, but his phones had been tapped, and the feds knew all about his little drug business. Now, while Henry was in jail, Karen went to go see Polly. Polly was very upset with Henry. This was something Polly would not help Henry with. He was against drugs, and Henry knew it. Polly began to cry and told Karen he had to turn his back on all of them, and he put $3,000 in her hand and turned around. Karen and Henry were on their own and had no one to turn to. While in the can, Henry thought of flipping on his friends. That way he could work out a deal and get out. But ultimately he decided against it. When U.S. Attorney Edward McDonald and FBI agents approached him, Henry was defiant. He wasn't going to tell them anything. They wanted information about LaFonza, so they told him if he cooperated, they would lighten his punishment. Plus, they had it on good authority that from numerous FBI informants that Jimmy was planning to whack Henry because Henry had also become a liability because of his drug use. Henry couldn't believe his ears. Jimmy was his friend, his mentor, his teacher, his confidant, his brother. No way was he going to do that. But the thought stuck in the back of Henry's mind. And after a few weeks in jail, Henry posted bail on May the 16th, 1980. He also did it on the weekend because he knew that the agents and the attorneys were off and he could slip out a little bit easier. As he got out of jail, Jimmy's wife called that Saturday morning to check on Karen. Karen told her that Henry was back home. Jimmy said he wanted to meet Henry as soon as possible. So the two agreed to meet at Sherwood Diner that Sunday morning. Jimmy beat Henry to the diner and sat in the booth at the very back so he could see if Henry was being followed. As Henry walked in, Jimmy gave him a big hug. He set Henry down and said he wanted to go over his case with him. But Henry noticed that Jimmy was jittery and he kept fidgeting. Henry knew what Jimmy was planning. He knew it all too well. Jimmy told Henry that he wanted him to go to Florida for a couple of days to do something for him. But he wanted Henry to come meet him at a bar in Queens that Wednesday to talk about it. It was a place that Henry had never heard of, and Henry had been Jimmy's friend for years, and he had never heard of this bar. His gut told him he was being set up. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink. I'm starting to lose my voice.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We're sitting here going, Henry, you know better. No. You know better.
I was gonna say you just got me kind of like
you don't sit at the back.
Like right now, you just had me like entranced the story. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I'm gonna sit here.
You
going,
were choking to death, and we were just listening.
Go. I know. We're like, go ahead, Ryan, choke. It's okay. Finish the story. It's good. Just don't go.
Now, Henry wasn't going to wait around to get whacked. He showed up at the sweatshop that Jimmy owned the next day. Henry went to the bar across the street from the sweatshop and had Karen go get Jimmy. Jimmy was surprised by the visit, but came across the street to the bar. He sat down with Henry and told him that he wanted to discuss. Jimmy asked Henry to go with associate Anthony Stabile down to Florida to whack somebody for him. In all the years he and Henry had been friends, Jimmy had never asked Henry to do anything like that. Henry knew if he went to Florida, he wasn't coming back. So Henry left the bar and dropped Karen at home and was going to go out and drive to kind of think about what he wanted to do. As soon as he was about to leave the driveway, the FBI surrounded him again and took him back into custody. This time, it didn't take any convincing. Henry agreed to tell what he knew about the Lafonza heist and other crimes.
He turned rat.
Mm-hmm. Oh. A big old rat.
That's what I say. Y'all don't do anything around me because, man, I'd sing like a damn canary.
Well, that's what I just said. I said, and he cooperated with the criminal prosecution of his friends. As long as he and his family were put into witness protection, the feds were more than happy to oblige, and Henry sang like a canary.
Ooh, buddy, yeah, I ain't holding none of y'all's crime secrets.
No.
Fuck y'all. Nope.
You better hold mine.
Nope, Shelly did it. She did it. She was the driver.
You know, Shelly keeps quicklime somewhere.
I don't care.
Actually, we do have some out in our shed. We have some quicklime.
Sure
of course you do, Shelly.
We actually
of
do.
Course you do.
Yeah. And I got lots of friends with lots of acreage.
And pigs.
No, actually, no. They got rid of their pigs. The person who had that, but no.
Well,
we know where I know where there's wild hogs.
Listen, I'm just telling y'all for future reference while we're on this story. Don't come to me with your crime secrets. I'm not going to hold them for you, and I will stay out of jail and sing like a canary while your ass gets.
I'm going to tell you right now.
Sorry.
To my grave. To my grave. To my grave. I'm not a rat.
I mean, money may have a sway in there somewhere. $24.5 million would be nice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole reason they're in the situation in the first place, is people are dropping like flies because Jimmy wants to keep that money. And, people are liabilities all of a sudden.
I'm working with a bunch of rats. Continue on with your fabulous story.
Don't worry. You got plenty of people in the comments who are willing to help you out, Shelly.
Thank
got a few
you.
that have
Thank
keys
you.
that have keys to heavy equipment as well. So
yeah.
So on February the 6th, 1984, as part of his deal, Henry took the stand against Pileggi in a fraud case. His testimony landed Pileggi 4 years in federal prison. Now, interestingly enough, Paulie ended up dying, I think, during his prison sentence, or maybe shortly thereafter. He had done something else, and he died in Fort Worth at the prison out there.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think he ever got out. I think he did die in prison.
Yeah.
I believe you're correct on that.
Mm-hmm. Henry also took the stand against Jimmy in a murder trial, testifying that Jimmy had told him he had, in fact, actually killed Richie Eaton, and this testimony put Jimmy behind bars for life, making Henry a rat, but a live one. But Henry and his family enjoyed years in the witness protection program, being relocated to Omaha, Nebraska initially.
Omaha.
Mm-hmm. And saying Henry was, but they moved him a couple times because Henry couldn't keep his mouth shut. He'd get drunk and kind of blab to people who he was and what he did.
You know who I am? I'm Henry Hill. Yeah, I'm the one that testified. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, I was in the mob.
Yeah. Calling the people calling the house. He's like, Hill residents.
That's not our name now, honey. Karen's over there being a Karen.
Shut up. Yeah, Karen's being a Karen now.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, he was moved a couple times, but ultimately was kicked out of the program in 1987 for drug trafficking in Seattle. He was selling cocaine again, and he got in trouble. Narcotics trafficking, to be exact. Now
he was running some numbers about the same time, though, wasn't he?
Oh, he did all kinds of stuff. He did all kinds of stuff after he got out, but what he did do was he made himself high profile enough to where the mob wouldn't come after him, because he also collaborates with Nicholas Pileggi and makes Wiseguy, which eventually becomes the Goodfellas movie. that comes out in 1990, directed by Martin Scorsese, which is a fantastic movie. You should go watch it. If you are interested in this at all, go check it out.
Graphic. Very graphic.
That's so good. So it's a classic.
Yeah.
But he and Karen actually end up getting divorced in 1990. And after the success of Goodfellas, Henry writes he ends up doing like a cookbook, like the cookbook for wise guys, where he has like his family recipes out there. Like he becomes.
I actually own that.
You have it? Have you made anything out of it?
Fuck up, silly.
Is it any good?
I don't know. I don't cook. I just want to accept a mobster that wrote it. I don't cook, but
see, I don't either. But I kind of want to try it out and see if it's any good, because he got some good recipes up in there from all those mobsters.
Oh yeah.
But he ends up doing that. He opens a restaurant at one point that closes down pretty quick. He gets married 2 or 3 more times, and then he ended up dying in 2012.
You fucking would have a cookbook written by a mobster.
I do. I do.
Shelly's got that cool shit over there, and I'm like, I got the Golden Girls cookbook. Anyways, go ahead.
I said, but he ends up, he does all that other stuff and ends up dying in 2012. But to end the story, I will tell you a personal anecdote that I have about Henry Hill. There is a museum in New York City over on St. Mark's Place. It is called the Museum of the American Gangster. And they have all kinds of cool stuff in there. Well, one day, Henry Hill comes walking up in there. And he's standing around, he looks around, and he's like, hey, you know who I am? And people are like, oh. And so he starts talking about who he is. And he's like, how you got to have all these things from all these different gangsters in here and not have something from me?
Because they don't put rats in the museum. That's why, Henry Hill.
So he ends up giving them these 2 paintings that he made that weren't very good, but still, it's really cool that they have paintings from Henry Hill hanging in there. Also, I was talking to some of the curators, and they said that he would stand around sometimes for hours and wouldn't leave. So they would have to make him leave sometimes.
Would he also sign some autographs if somebody recognized him? He'd sign his autograph for him.
They said he'd just come in and hang out every now and again, just to like be around, because he truly did. And he makes no bones about it. He truly did miss that life. He loved everything about it. All he ever wanted to be was a gangster. He didn't want to do anything else with his life other than that. So, once he turns rat, you turn your back on that life forever. And he's lucky he didn't get taken out, because
lucky he didn't get whacked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But he made himself so high profile that nobody went after him.
Couldn't touch him. Right.
And Goodfellas is a notorious mob movie. I mean, by all accounts, a lot of mobsters love that movie because it's a pretty accurate description of what goes on in the mob, just like how a lot of mobsters love The Sopranos. And these guys are doing all this crazy shit back then. I don't know if it goes on as much as it did back then. I'm sure there's still some of that goes on. But
don't you worry about what the mob's doing right now. You just mind your business.
But it's very, very interesting. And that is the story of Henry Hill.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to say, like, I guess luckiest and worst mobster ever kind of situation, I mean, it's like seriously, I mean, come on. Like, you get put in these situations because your friend parks the getaway car in front of a fucking fire hydrant and leaves all the masks. Jesus.
And one dude takes his mask off in front of the hostages.
Hey, Idiot. I can't blame him. He was hot.
Yeah, you can.
Yes.
You can get over it.
I get
you can sweat and toil with your money, okay?
Right.
I totally get it. He was hot. That's how I would get caught.
You better.
I know you would. You go, it's so hot. I'm sweating. It's like I'm sweating my ass off. I'm sweating like a whore in church. But
I'm keeping that mask
mask off. Yeah,
that's right.
I say, you know where it's real hot? Prison.
That's right. Prison and hell, and then if you don't go to prison, somebody's gonna send you to hell if you get them caught. So that's 2 places you don't want to go.
Absolutely. So
this is why I'm not meant for the life of crime. I'm just saying.
Well, Shelly, we know who to trust now. I'm whispering over here to him. We know.
Yeah, wrong direction.
Other way.
Not
fucker.
you, apparently.
Hey, it's reversed. So I can.
Okay.
So for Shelly, did you know that about Gotti actually being the one to kill Tommy DeSimone?
That has been rumored for a while. That was supposedly, one of the. Like, Gotti was known to have done several himself and gotten his hands dirty, especially when he was trying to become made. He would have been a capo at that point.
Yeah, he was a capo.
So nobody could have touched him. So I can easily see how he would have just been like, This is what we do. Bang, bang. And done. Because he got permission to do the hit, which means that he was the one that would do the hit. Because usually, if you believe what you read, because what you read, I don't know, I'm only saying is what I've read, that whenever you get the hit approved, you have to tell them who's going to do it. You know, so-and-so is going to be taken out, or I'm going to have this crew go take him out. You got to have approval. That's how they end up retaliating. That so-and-so hit so-and-so, but yeah, but it was approved. You leave it alone. So I'm guessing that if Gotti went and asked permission, Gotti was the one that was going to do it.
You know, up until I found that piece of information, all I've ever heard was that he was taken to an undisclosed location and whacked. Like there was never any details.
I had heard in a basement, and he was whacked in a basement, and it was rumored that it was Gotti. That was the only part I'd ever heard. I hadn't heard that much detail on it. And again, it's Henry's story.
Right. It's Henry's story. So someone asked Henry later on, they were like, you know, why didn't you say that in Wiseguy whenever you were talking about what happened to Tommy D. Simone? And he said that he did not want reprisal from the Gotti crew, and that's why he didn't talk about it then.
Gotti still alive then, whenever they were writing Goodfellas? Yeah, he didn't want nothing to do with Gotti.
So he said that later on when they wrote because there's a whole nother book that I didn't know about that I need to get my hands on. It's all just about the LaFonza heist altogether, and there's more information that Henry released in that book.
What's it called? Like what not to do during a heist?
Pretty much. It's just called
like the top 100 things of what not to do to fuck up and get caught.
How to remove ski masks and get whacked.
Yeah.
How to park your car. Yeah. Idiots.
So, but that book is actually called The LaFonza Heist. If anybody is interested and wants to go grab that, I'm probably going to do that as soon as I get off of here. But yeah, I mean, that was some information I had never heard. I had also, never heard that Gotti actually had a sit down with Paulie Vario either. Like I never knew that until I found that other piece of information from that book.
I knew it had been rumored, and again, I'd read that it had been rumored that whenever I was doing the Gotti research, that he was rumored to have done that. But because it was a rumor, I was kind of like, I don't know. Do you say? I mean, he did. There was plenty about him to talk about.
Now, also, there was a rumor that Gotti actually had a hand in the LaFonza heist as well. That all that stuff that they took.
The LaFonza heist was Gotti.
He had a warehouse.
Right, it was his warehouse. So, and now, if you believe what the accounts of what Gotti's crew had said about it, was that Gotti was actually the one who had the idea, but he didn't want his crew associated with it if they got pinched. So that's why he had this other group to do it, because one of them controlled the dock areas, which was the Lucchese family, and the other side controlled. Go ahead, Blake.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go back to kindergarten level real quick, because I can obviously use my context clues to figure this out. However, there may be somebody who's listening who may not know. What is the level of a capo?
They're just like a captain.
There's the boss, the underboss, and then the capos.
Gotcha.
There can be multiple capos. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, see, and I knew that. See, I know.
So
I know enough to get me in trouble.
The Godfather's the CEO.
The
underboss is the is like the manager, and then the capos are all the assistant managers. Yeah,
got it. Okay.
So capo's middle management. Right.
I'm there. I'm right there with you. Got it.
But just to show you how all connected all of these families are and all of this is. So you had the Lucchese family that pulled it off. You were talking about the Gambino family that had a hand in it with the warehouse. Also, the Colombo family also helped run the airport, and the Colombo family got a piece of that as well. So you had at least those three families that for sure got a piece of that money from that whole heist, that whole score. And they would, there are times where like they're kind of at odds with each other, but most of the time they help each other out and help each other pull some of these bigger heists and these bigger jobs off.
Well, a lot of times they would have to collaborate, because you couldn't go pull a job on the docks if the docks were being run by this family at the time without clearing it, because that was theirs for the taking. But if you offered to say, hey, we'll do the job, we'll cut you in. That way, if anybody gets pinched, it isn't your crew that did it. So y'all are still, and they kind of trade off like that a lot in a lot of the stories. So, they go and ask for the Bonanno family's permission to do this, or, Blue Casey's, the Gambinos or Columbus, or, whatever. So they would go and ask. So it came from the cops. Yeah, they didn't get pinched. It wasn't my crew.
Yeah, because when they say organized crime, they mean organized crime. Like you have
syndicate.
You have proposals, you have to get approved. It really does work like a business works. So
I feel like I should be taking notes for the test that is going to happen later.
The mob.
So what are y'all's thoughts on Henry Hill and all of his buddies?
He has got a very interesting story, and this is somebody like I said at the very beginning. I am not as well versed in this world as you two are. I am getting there. I'm opening the door. I'm learning and all that stuff. So he's got a very interesting story. However, his fucking buddies were idiots, man. Like Jesus Christ, really? Some of these situations that they get into. But my God, this is going to sound horrible to say because I know it was all crime and killing and all that stuff, but kind of what a smart man, but at the same time, not a smart man.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense. I mean,
he was a smart man.
He's
he was
criminal
very
minded.
Proud of what he did and wanted to tell everybody his accomplishments.
Exactly.
A brilliant criminal mind.
There you go.
With a really stupid ego.
Yeah, who like to talk just a little too much.
See, but now Jimmy, I would argue Jimmy is actually very smart because Jimmy, was trying to distance himself from the people who pulled the heist and was picking all those people off. And he just kind of got tripped off by like a drug dealer he killed who just happened to have his name and phone number in his pocket. So
that was planted. That was on purpose.
I don't know about that. I think it could have just been blind rage.
Who walks around with a mobster's phone number? Don't they tell you to memorize that shit and then eat it? Eat the paper. You don't carry that around.
But this guy was also he was a drug dealer. He just wasn't like a regular. He was an associate, but he wasn't like a mob associate. He was just a drug dealer, from what I understand.
What are you laughing at, Blake?
Oh God, just you, just you, Shelly, just you. You cracked.
You better not carry my phone number around. You better have me in there under a different name. I don't care what you put me as, but it better not be my name.
You cracked me up.
You know my big rule: never put anything in writing. Never.
So I think it's hilarious that I will tell you this a little side story. Towards the beginning, we were given some nicknames towards the beginning.
Okay.
Oh hell.
I'm trying to go back to it right now.
Have they been revised since it came to the end?
However, I think it was settled on in the YouTube comments that it's going to be Ryan Cornbread Roberts.
Okay.
That was settled in the
I'll take that.
A few went out for me like Blake Smiles, because I smile too much. Blake Smiles Smith, Blake E.T. Smith, Shelly. I don't know. Somebody put Meanie Blake. That's not very nice. Why? Because I'd rat on Shelly. Shelly, you got Shelly's Scary Doll Pruitt. Let's see here. There was a couple of other ones. Another my favorite for Shelly was Psycho Shelly. Yeah,
I think that works.
You know what? Sorry, I've been called that my whole life. It's totally fine. Ask any of my exes. Definitely,
that's true.
It's fine. I'll go with that.
So I'll go with cornbread. I'll go.
We call you
cornbread
now. Cornbread Roberts. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I should be. You better shut the fuck up, Shelly. Is what I'll be.
How ominous is that nickname? Oh, cornbread. Cornbread will get you, man. Okay.
It will get you. You never know. Oh my God. Should we wrap this up? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was going to say, Blake, tell them what they need to know.
All right. Y'all, we got some brand new announcements. So listen up. So if you need even more from us, you can watch our brand new talk show After Dark with DVP exclusively on Paraflix Paranormal Plus. Our entire first season is now available on that platform. We have 8 episodes consisting of interviews with other individuals in the paranormal field and haunted location owners, and our paranormal investigations with evidence you won't see anywhere other than Paraflix. Paraflix is available on Amazon Fire, Roku TV, Apple TV, iOS, and Google Play. Make sure to use the link that is about to be posted in the comments as well as in the show notes for all those audio listeners. Sign up and use our code AfterDark25 for 25% off your annual subscription. Tomorrow we're going to post up our Linktree link, which is going to include links to everything that we do. That is going to be that link to the Paraflix platform and every social media platform we are on, our online merchandise store, our public investigations, as well as very 2 specific items. First one is going to be our Patreon page. Listen up, we have something new. This is the fastest and easiest way you can help support the show directly. For just $5 a month, you will gain access to over 250 plus Patreon exclusive videos. This support goes directly to the show and the adventures that we bring you week after week. This price is never going to change. And with that, you currently get our pre and post broadcasts, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast, where we continue to I was going to say, where we continue to discuss things further, fight and act goofy as hell, our special video cast and Paracon speaking events. And as of tonight, it is now going to include our Patreon exclusive raw and unedited investigation footage. Today, we posted up 2 of our Estes methods in their entirety from the Squirrel Cage Jail investigation we did on December the 2nd. This is something new that we are now offering where you get to watch our raw footage and let us know what you see or hear. So if you've ever wanted to review our evidence with us, now is your chance, and that is only on Patreon. And secondly, we are going to have a link. We've added a GoFundMe to our link tree for the McIntyre Villa. If you have watched After Dark with EVP, you know Stephanie O'Reilly, owner of the McIntyre Villa. They are having issues with the boiler there. They are needing to get it replaced. So if you have the time and the means, head over to our link tree where you can find that link and make your donation there. So make sure you're following us.
I'm sorry. I was going to say very quickly, whenever you go to that GoFundMe page, make sure you put, you go and you follow it, put boiler in the comments, because for a $50 donation, you are entered into a raffle for a drawing for a free night at McIntyre Villa. That includes the mysterious Sam and Mike. You get to investigate with them and a barbecue dinner.
Yes.
Wow. So make sure you put the
hell of a deal.
And that Kansas City boiler. Barbecue is legit.
That's pretty damn good.
Pretty damn good. Well, make sure you're following us across all social media platforms, as we are now, as of today, starting to release different pieces of evidence as well as announcements for tickets and investigations to different social media channels. So if you're just following us on one channel, you're only getting a small portion of the story. These are all the ways you can directly support everything Vaguely Paranormal, but we also appreciate your love. Appreciate and love your support and love for us through those likes, comments, shares, views, and downloads. And remember, as always, any questions, comments, or stories you'd like to share with us, those can be sent to us at the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Like, share, and subscribe. But I have one thing I would like to ask. Please make my Christmas wish come true. And everybody who is watching tonight or listening, if you listen on Spotify, whatever, if you watch it on Facebook, please everybody go and hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. That way you don't miss anything. We're changing a few things up and you're going to be getting some new things. But that's my Christmas wish. I want to see a whole bunch of new followers on YouTube tomorrow.
That is also going to help get us out into the field more, bringing you even more haunted locations, even more investigations, and even more evidence. So if y'all could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. And for you audio
know what
listeners,
I'm telling you, I want you to do it.
And for you audio listeners, that's also going to be in the show notes as well. So you can find that in the description below. So.
All right. So like, share, and subscribe, right?
That's what I said.
Oh, I did not hear you say that. I'm sorry.
I said it first.
Okay. All right. So for everything Vaguely Paranormal, I am Ryan Roberts. These are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. And we will see y'all next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Chloe.